Welcome and thank you for joining us for this webinar around securing IoT and OT. My name is Peter Newton and with me is Raju Nagar, and we're going to be sharing with you some of the lessons around how to secure IoT as well as the challenges facing the OT world. So to begin with, as we talk about this important topic, we need to kind of set some baseline understanding and definitions of what these terms mean, IoT, OT, because there are a lot of terms that are used in this space. And the definitions that we are embracing here at Fortinet is that OT is a subset of the greater IoT world, whereas IoT really addresses pretty much any devices that are communicating with each other, directly with each other. OT is that type of architecture specifically within the realm of controlling physical devices or events in an industrial environment. And then further within that, there are terms such as industrial control systems or supervisory control and data acquisition that are even further subsets within the OT space. But we wanted to make sure that everybody was clear that when we do talk about IoT, it does include OT, and that OT is a special subset of the IoT world. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Raju, who's going to talk to us about securing IoT, and then I'll come back a little bit later and talk about securing OT. Raju?
Thank you, Peter. Hello, everyone. So let me now take you through securing IoT. So IoT, the Internet of Things, represents what I would say a new genus of the Internet. Many refer to it as the digital disruption or the digital economy, but IoT is delivering better ways to personalize products and services, offer new customer services, create new revenue opportunities, and generate new growth. So IoT really is spearheading, it's the key driver for digital disruption. Experts predict that by 2020, there will be 4.3 IoT connected devices for every person on the planet. North America is currently actually the most saturated market with an average of 13 connected IoT devices per household. So IoT is much more prevalent than we even think. Predictions are that IoT will generate over 14 billion of value over the next decade, and sales of clothes and accessories with computer technology in them is going to grow to actually over 42 billion in 2019. And finally, Gartner estimates that cumulative IoT spending will reach 2.9 trillion in the year 2020. So here are some examples of IoT. This is what we call the daily stuff that we use every day, such as the Apple Watch, Google Glasses, iPhones, smart TVs, clothing, home appliances, you name it. These are all actually IoT devices. And then there's the serious stuff. Some IoT, some OT. This includes things like HVAC, smart metering, healthcare monitoring, medical devices, smart buildings, connected cars, things like windmills, power plants, and then also critical infrastructure, which actually falls under the OT umbrella. So IoT, as I mentioned, this is an enabler of a larger digital transformation that is already producing actually vast quantities of data to be stored, parsed, and transmitted over an ever-expanding global network. This treasure trove of data is going to impact nearly every aspect of our daily lives. But IoT is not without its risks and downsides, and concerns over IoT are only growing. Not only commercial and financial impact due to cyber breaches, but the risks extend to the critical infrastructure of our communities, and lives can potentially be at risk. So let's take a look at the IoT distributed ecosystem. You have the device domain, the network domain, service domain, and the apps domain. So IoT really is an end-to-end ecosystem, and this ecosystem is distributed and spans all these multiple domains. Now, data ingestion by the application and device control over the endpoint and communications in between, you can see that, and then there's an IoT edge platform or gateway in between. IoT endpoints typically communicate over public networks and often without encryption, and they're sending data via unprotected networks. So traffic is unmonitored, unmanaged, and unprotected. And public Wi-Fi and new approaches around Bluetooth are of particular concern. The service domains and the application domains, they represent destination points for the IoT devices. They may reside in the private cloud, which is the data center, the public cloud, the hybrid cloud, or even on-premises. And some of the common IoT applications in the apps domain today that you'll find are order management, inventory management, asset management, manufacturing operations, ERP, CRM, and the list only continues to grow. So, device domain, where vulnerability really begins. IoT devices were not designed with security in mind. IoT device manufacturers typically are cost constrained. They can be small companies. They have go-to-market pressures. They don't understand security. And further compounding the problem is a lack of standardization. So what is the net result? A lot of IoT devices are finding their way into enterprises and consumers' homes without any security in them. The problem is particularly bad in headless IoT devices, which cannot authenticate or have security installed on them. Therefore, assume that all IoT devices are hostile and need to be secured. Security must start at the network domain level and continue in the service and application domains, which is where the cybersecurity risks are most present. This is where the use of authentication, layer 7 firewalling, application security, analytics, and segmentation can be applied. So cybersecurity is the number one challenge for IoT. This really remains the top technology-related challenge that is hampering IoT deployments more pervasively, particularly in enterprise networks. IoT devices can be accessed. They can cause DOS attacks, DDoS attacks. They can breach and destroy sensitive data, but you really cannot install meaningful security on them. The bigger concern is that we have focused so much on the devices themselves that it has resulted in incomplete or inadequate security prevention and detection for IoT. This needs to change, and the security focus needs to shift away from the devices themselves to the ecosystem that these devices operate in. So let's take a look now at the IoT implications for enterprises. On the left here, you can see some projections by Gartner. Gartner projects that there will be close to 20 billion installed base of IoT units in 2020. Many of these will have little or no security installed on them, and they will be connecting to data centers in the cloud. So this exponential increase in IoT devices and their accessibility to the network is going to have considerable impact both on connectivity needs in the network as well as the security aspect of it. IoT deployments, as I mentioned earlier, will generate large quantities of data that need to be processed and analyzed in real time, which will certainly impact data center workloads, but this will also create challenges for infrastructure around, for instance, network latency, compute capacity, and then also network and data security. The problem is, one of the problems is that enterprise infrastructure is not IoT aware. What this means is that IoT devices are not integrated with the IT part of the network and they still remain separate. So security policies that govern access for IT endpoints are not applied to IoT endpoints. And this is what creates the cybersecurity risk. The attack surface generated by IoT is not addressed, and there is considerable exposure to cyber threats, to the IoT devices themselves, and also to the network. So Fortinet Security Fabric is a comprehensive open security architecture that provides protection for IoT by covering the broad attack surface, by providing integrated detection of advanced threats and automated response along with continuous trust assessment. All these capabilities, as we will see in the next few slides, are critical to enabling IoT security. So what IoT problem? Your attack surface changes every time a new application is installed or a new device enters your network, or even a new device that involves using the browser or internet. Devices and applications ship with or proliferate malware more often than we imagine. While an IT endpoint has protections and authentication privileges associated with it, an IoT device is lacking that security mechanism. So as IoT devices are brought into the larger IT network fold, you can no longer think of keeping IoT security separate from network security. It would be too much overhead, too many gaps and inconsistencies, and the cost impact would be significant. So the two must really be treated as a whole from a security perspective. So whenever your network surface changes, whether that change is brought about by IoT or something else, your network security solution must learn about the change, audit that change to make sure it is in accordance with the best practices established by the organization, analyze the attack surface against the configuration using real-time data and business rules. This is in fact something that the interconnected security fabric does, and these are what we consider baseline capabilities of a network security solution, which should be extending to IoT. So Fortinet's IoT security approach is security fabric based, and it uses a trust-based framework as the foundation for automated protection. There are many different types of flavors of IoT in your network, some that you know about and others that you don't. At its very basic level, we can categorize or classify IoT into managed, tolerated, and rogue IoT devices. Managed IoT is the trust-based domain with the most privileges. Tolerated IoT, and examples of that could be your personal devices such as your personal iPhone or your personal laptop, a book, need restricted access. And then rogue IoT are unknown devices that should not be allowed any access privileges at all. So a prudent approach to developing and deploying an intelligent security architecture should really focus on 3 steps, and that is learn, segment, and protect. So let's go into each one of those in a little more detail. So Fortinet's 3 focus areas: reducing the attack surface, learn, segment, and protect, as I just said. Learning deals with device identification and discovery and taking predictive action. Real-time discovery and classification of devices allows the network, for example, actually the firewall, to build risk profiles and automatically assign them to IoT device groups along with appropriate policies. The second one is segment. By developing these risk assessments, you can then create a segmentation strategy that controls what the device can access. Segmenting IoT devices and communications into policy-driven groups and secured network zones allows the network to automatically grant and enforce baseline privileges that are suitable, for instance, for a specific IoT device risk profile. And the third one is protect everything. Enforce segmentation with consistent policy enforcement and continuous monitoring. Policy-driven IoT groups combined with internal network segmentation enables multi-layered monitoring, inspection and enforcement of device policies based on activity anywhere across the distributed enterprise infrastructure. The Fortinet security fabric enables this correlation of intelligence between the different network and security devices, as well as the automated application of advanced security functions to IoT devices and traffic, whether it is in the data center, at the edge, access points, or in the cloud. So now let's look at how each one is handled by the fabric and other security elements in the data center or any other part of the network, as the case may be. So step 1, let's take a closer look at learn and how the Fortinet security fabric and FortiGate handles the discovery and identification. In the learning area, the FortiGate enterprise firewalls play a really important role in IoT device detection and discovery. FortiGates include a device discovery and detection function with a device category database to which new devices can be added continually and classified, and other functions necessary in this step actually include device profiling and tagging. So here on the right-hand side, you can see a screenshot of the FortiGate FortiView. And you can see some device discovery of an IoT device. Specifically, the example that we are showing here is an Apple TV. So you can see the MAC address, the interface, and the OS. So something else we've done with FortiOS 6.0 is that we have introduced enhancements to FortiGate. And these enhancements actually enhance the endpoint intelligence which extends to IoT. For example, the ability to create custom devices and groups to address IoT segments or classes of IoT devices. So this device tagging function, which was introduced initially in FortiOS 5.6 and FortiGate, and is now enhanced in 6.0, is used for classifying endpoint devices connected to the network and identifying, for instance, the location of the device, its functions, and the device authorization status. And this information can then be used for device inventory and policy object filtering. And of course, we've also introduced the ability to create custom groups for IoT and endpoint devices. So visibility into the network is the first step in gaining insight into what's happening on your network and to see trends based on risk profiles and type of infrastructure. Fabric, what you're seeing here is the fabric topology view. This fabric visibility helps to improve segmentation. The view you're seeing here is, like I mentioned, the security fabric topology view. This is available both as a physical and a logical topology of your security elements across your entire network. It shows you the network configuration from the primary down to the access points and the device groups, and it also shows you the audit configurations, the segmentations and security policies that are being implemented, allows you to drill down and take corrective action. So this type of visibility, enabled by the fabric, promotes segmentation and also enables expanded intelligence and control over all the attack surfaces. So that was part of learning. Step 2 is segmentation. Now let's take a look at how the security fabric promotes segmentation in your network, and particularly segmentation as it relates to IoT devices. So segmenting your IoT network requires understanding the risk profile, the type of device, whether it is known to the network or unknown, and then applying security policies accordingly. Managed IoT devices that are recognized and trusted, for example, can be allowed wider access, whereas unmanaged devices have restricted access. And rogue devices should be quarantined or denied complete access because potentially malware can be suspected on the device, or it could just be untrusted or unknown to the network. Something else that's really important is correlation with third-party databases and monitoring tools such as SIM, which helps in understanding the different device types, their associated behaviors, and their risk profiles. And several exist today, including Fortinet's own FortiSIM, VM tools, and also databases of IoT gateway vendors can play a very important role in device classification. So these are just some of the ways that you can get access to device identification, and this really promotes segmentation. So segmentation really is a function of the internal segmentation firewall, and this could be physical or virtual. Segmentation needs to be really effective for IoT, needs to be beyond layer 3. Here, the FortiGate segments and applies policy to restrict communications with specific networks and applications. And FortiGate, of course, was the first internal segmentation firewall that was introduced in the market. Something else you can do with the FortiGate internal segmentation firewall is you can set up authentication rules to control attachment to the network. One caution would be avoid adding complexity. A single internal segmentation firewall is often enough to address the segmentation requirement. And by virtue of the VDOM support in FortiGates, you could easily have a single internal segmentation firewall that could provide isolated security policies, or I should say segmented security policies for different segments, all from a single FortiGate. So, this network diagram here on the right-hand side is showing you the security elements and the location of the internal segmentation firewall. Now let's go to step 3, which is protection. You've learned about the IoT devices. You've also segmented them out using an internal segmentation firewall. The final step in a secure IoT architecture is ensuring continuous trust assessment and continuous protection. There are two parts to this. One is you define and enforce. Security policies need to be defined. You can also choose predefined templates for your known network devices, ports and protocols, and recognized IoT devices such as printers, smart TVs, etc., and other popular endpoints that are going to be in your network. For all others, you can apply policies based on the security posture that is discovered by the network and the risk profiles. But above all, continuous trust assessment is needed so that the network can respond to threats as they are discovered, because the threat landscape is going to be continuously changing and evolving. So the second part of it is the enforcement. Once an IoT device is secured and becomes part of your network, it must be protected in a coordinated fashion with all the other network elements. And this requires enforcing security policies not only at the firewall but across the entire network, wherever that IoT device may be accessing, whatever the ingress point could be. Things such as threat intelligence obtained via communication between the different security elements in the network and taking action to contain a threat that may be discovered in one place in your network, for instance, but has the potential to spread across. Using a sandbox to provide proactive threat detection and quarantining, sharing that threat intelligence with other security elements to disrupt the attack early in the cycle without human intervention. These are some of the capabilities that are provided by the security fabric and that need to become a part of your protection and continuous trust assessment. So within the fabric, within the Fortinet security fabric, threat intelligence is distributed to the access points and to the switches, as well as used to block rogue devices and block traffic that doesn't match any security templates that are in place. The final step would be to generate an alert within the fabric about any new rogue device that may be discovered. Now, there is a class of IoT devices that are managed. These are devices that are not headless, so they can have an agent installed on them. For these managed devices, endpoint scanning helps with vulnerability discovery, weak passwords, non-compliant OS versions, and allowing the remediation to take place so that the device can access the network. So FortiClient on the managed endpoint, a managed IoT endpoint, I should say, scans for these vulnerabilities and remediation. And you can see here a screenshot of the FortiClient agent providing these capabilities on the right side of the screen. So in summary, IoT cannot be treated as an isolated or independent component of your business. We haven't even begun to scratch the surface of the amount of damage that can be done via an IoT-based attack. Every day, new devices connect to the company network. A growing number of these devices are actually IoT, and they're putting your network at greater risk. So IoT devices and data interact across and with your extended network, including access devices, cloud, traditional, and virtual IoT, and a security architecture that can deliver visibility and segmentation across your entire network, be it IoT or IoT, is really a good approach to begin with. And the fabric provides the foundation for this secure architecture. Now, we have the Fortinet Fabric Ready Technology Alliance program, and we have forged partnerships, tight partnerships with Fabric Ready partners in many, many different areas. IoT and OT is one space in which we have Fabric Ready partners that are integrated with Fortinet, and these two partners are Forescout and Nozomi. Forescout specifically is an IoT Fabric Ready partner, and they deliver an IoT extended module called Counteract for Fortinet, which is a working integration currently in place. And I want to quickly mention here what the joint solution looks like and what the benefits are. So Forescout really enhances the auto discovery and the profiling of IoT devices and shares this information real time with FortiGate and allows the FortiGate next generation firewall to segment the IoT devices, create custom groups as needed, and enforce policies based on risk profiles. So the two products work really closely together to strengthen IoT defenses. So you can see here on the right-hand side, Forescout is sharing with FortiGate as these new devices onboard to the network, the real-time user identity to IP mapping without any use of agents, because Forescout is agentless technology. It then profiles, classifies, and dynamically tags these devices and sends this information over to FortiGate firewall, which then implements network segmentation using device tags. And exchanging this real-time device context and security posture with FortiGate really allows FortiGate to enforce these policies real-time as the threat posture changes. So together, it's a really strong solution that improves network defenses and response. And of course, we have, like I mentioned, the working integration now available. So I just want to end the IoT security portion of this presentation by again reminding you that it's the Fortinet Security Fabric architecture that secures IoT. It's an open, comprehensive security architecture that provides broad visibility and protection of the digital attack surface, integrated detection of advanced threats, and automated response and continuous trust assessment, all of which are really critical capabilities for securing IoT devices in your network. I'm now going to hand it off to Peter for OT.
Thank you, Raju. Now that we've talked a little bit about the broader challenge of securing IoT networks, let's talk more specifically about securing OT networks, which are those more serious industrial networks. So for this portion of the presentation, we'll be covering some basics about OT, take a look at some of the rising threats that we're seeing, and then present the best practices for securing those OT solutions. And then we'll wrap up by discussing a case study from one of our customers. So to start with, OT are those IoT systems that are used to control, monitor, and operate industrial processes that are used to create things, and whether that's manufacturing, but it also encompasses the creation of energy or clean water. So processes are also relevant here. Operational technologies are sometimes considered critical technologies because these are the type of things that you see with respect to those critical services and capabilities that really enable our quality of life and our living standards, whether that comes down to the oil production, hydroelectric power, chemical processing, other stuff that enables us to live the comfortable lives that we do. And OT is used in a variety of environments. And a lot of people think of the more harsh environments as being synonymous with OT. However, there is a lot of OT technology that actually takes place within environmentally controlled areas. But that said, there are areas that are harsh, and solutions do need to take that into account. What does a standard OT network look like? Now, this is an example of a SCADA system, which is, as I mentioned earlier, part of the OT world. And you can see at the very bottom, it talks about the actual physical devices that are being controlled. Those are those valves, pumps, etc., that are being manipulated by the digital commands. Those digital commands are interpreted by they're either remote terminal units or programmable logic controllers. Those are the things that turn the electronic control messages into those serial control messages for the actual hardware in the field. Now those PLCs and RTUs, they're getting their information from the MTUs and the HMIs, which is where the operators are actually inputting the information. And those are the kind of the key parts of an OT system. Now those OT systems then sit within a greater network. There's the OT side of the house, which we talked about, but that also is connecting over to the IT side of the house, typically with a firewall in between to provide some network segmentation. Now, OT and IT, they're both two letters, but they actually have very different philosophies and very different cultures when it comes to dealing with the processes and equipment under their control. For IT, their function is to manipulate information. It's all about making sure that the bits and bytes going through the system that are stored in the servers are being handled properly, appropriately, and securely. For OT, it's really the focus is not on the bits and bytes going through the system, but really on the physical processes that those bits and bytes are affecting. It's those physical processes, whether it's processing chemicals, creating electricity, making cars. Those are the focus of the OT community. For IT, people are very interested in standardization. They're looking for common tools, for common ways of doing things. And that standardization brings a lot of good benefits to the IT world. In the OT world, however, a lot of the solutions they have need to be very specialized for their applications. Their ability to maintain those physical processes, to keep them going at peak optimization, requires unique and special solutions. And for that reason, the solutions in the OT world tend to see a lot more specialization than on the IT side of the house. And finally, on the IT side, that data that the IT world is watching and manipulating and shipping around within the data centers, they're trying to maintain, the IT world is trying to maintain confidentiality. They want to make sure that if no matter what happens, that data is kept safe. It's kept out of the hands of people who shouldn't have access to that. Whether the network is available 24/7, that's desirable, but in the interest of safeguarding that data, there's no question, no hesitation to take systems down to ensure that confidentiality. As you might suspect by the nature of this slide, on the OT side of things, it's completely different. On the OT side of things, the number one priority is not to keep the information secure, but to keep those physical processes going. It's about making sure that no matter what, the water gets processed, no matter what, the manufacturing continues. They want to make sure that this core function of the company continues to produce what needs to be, what their function is producing. And this creates a completely opposite view as to what should happen if something gets infected or is potentially infected or needs to be patched. The idea of taking a production line down for maintenance or to clean up something doesn't make sense to them. And so OT folks want to be able to patch and repair while things are still in process, still in production. So these two very different cultures make complete sense given where their focus is and what is required, what's being asked of them in their jobs. This has created some challenges as these two groups need to work together now that the OT world is starting to use some of the IT systems and is connecting their OT networks to the internet and to the cloud and to the wide world of IT. And with those connections, it's really opened the door to just-in-time productivity, to optimize production, to optimize resource scheduling, but that's also opened the door for bad folks to come in and do things that are not so optimized or desired. Some examples of that is happen on a regular basis. I've selected some examples of news stories in the past couple of years that have come up that shows where hackers have come in and either been able to actually perform damage. For example, in the Ukraine power hack that took power down for days for thousands of customers, they actually conducted a very sophisticated attack, took several months to complete, and they created a lot of damage as a part of that. There are other examples where somebody got into a water treatment plant and just kind of messed around a little bit. They didn't really do anything, but they were able to get access to the physical devices that were affecting the quality of water for lots of folks. Had that breach been conducted by someone with more knowledge of those water treatment processes and capabilities, and had been so inclined to create more damage, that could have been a far more dangerous and disastrous hack. The point of this slide is simply to note that these OT systems are under attack. There are a variety of folks that are attacking it, and there can be quite serious consequences to those attacks. We periodically survey OT customers, and in at the very end of 2016, we ran a survey, and with that survey, more than half of the OT operators acknowledged that they had been breached within the last 12 months. So that's pretty significant to say that half of our OT targets or or production facilities had actually been hacked. So that's just amazing. Now, the good news is those folks are aware, the folks operating those OT environments are aware of it, and they are increasing their spending to better protect their networks. They do recognize that they are targets of these actors. Now, to emphasize the severity and significance of attacking an OT type target, this is an example of an attack, a successful attack that happened back in 2009 in Russia, where a hydroelectric dam was being brought online, and it was a beautiful station, made a lot of electricity, and they had a breach. And with that breach, someone was able to take one of their power units and have it rotate just a little bit too fast. And that caused that power unit to actually lift up out of its enclosure there and cause a great deal of damage to that dam. And in the end, it actually caused the death of more than 70 folks and took that power plant offline for 2 years. So there was no confirmation of who did this, but this did happen during the Chechen rebellion in Russia, and it was suspected that this cyber attack was conducted by Chechen nationals. So this is a way that folks can go after and attack someone's capabilities and really do a significant amount of damage. The reason these attacks are now possible is because many of the systems that are used to control OT networks have been around for quite some time, and they were traditionally air-gapped from the IT world. They were run completely separately. There was no connections to the outside world. People couldn't get to them, and they were run on very specialized gear, so it was hard to attack them even if you could get to them. However, in our new world, these systems are being connected to the internet, they're being connected to the cloud, and that has opened the door for more people to be able to get to these devices and spend the energy and effort to attack these proprietary and specialized hardware. The good news is that Fortinet does have a wonderful solution when it comes to protecting these new OT networks. The security fabric that we have developed supporting the security of enterprise networks also has the same capabilities that OT networks need to protect their solutions and their production systems. Now, there are differences in the way that they will be deployed and some of the gear that's being used, but fundamentally the concept of a broad, integrated, and automated solution that provides coverage across the various threat landscape, it's the same functionality and capability that OT networks need in order to protect themselves. So Fortinet is well positioned to provide that protection. So let's talk about what that protection would look like. What do we recommend that OT networks do, OT network operators do to keep their network secure? So we saw this picture before where we showed the differences between the IT and OT networks. The first thing that we recommend is segmenting your network. This involves putting FortiGates at various points within your network to ensure that the traffic flowing through your network is appropriate and authorized and should be there. This provides a great level of control and prevents those east-west attacks such that if one device is compromised, it's not able to run rampant throughout the network and will get stopped before it goes too far. Now note on this diagram we are showing our standard FortiGates being deployed into the more environmentally controlled areas and one of our rugged FortiGates being deployed out in the field network next to those valves, fans, and pumps. Fortinet does have a range of rugged FortiGates available for these field placements. Here's some of the information on those, but the point being is we can support a variety of deployments depending on what the needs of our customers. Those rugged devices have been designed and tested for harsh environments, and that doesn't just mean temperature of going beyond and being deployed outside an air-conditioned room. It also includes operating in environments that might have a lot of vibration or other electromagnetic interference. You don't want a chip or wire solder on a board to shake itself loose and prevent the functioning of a unit. So we test these for vibration to make sure that even if they're deployed next to a shaking production machine, that they will continue to protect the integrity of the digital network. In addition to being able to operate in harsh environments, our industrial FortiGates have the ability to look into industrial signatures. We actually have specialized signatures that our FortiGates can use when deployed into industrial networks. We actually have more than 1,000 signatures for industrial environments, and that's really looking at the various protocols and applications that OT operators are using. And those have been available since FortiOS 5.6, and we're continuing to expand and add more signatures to those. Some examples of the protocols that are in that industrial control package include BACnet and Modbus and EtherCAT, but there's a lot more down here as well. You'll also see on this page there's a number of vendors out there that provide OT equipment. Those machines are also in that signature database for identification. So this is hugely important when you're looking into your OT network and want your firewall to be able to properly identify the gear that's deployed out in your network. Our second best practice is securing the physical infrastructure that's connecting these devices together. And by that we mean the wired and wireless access points. So Fortinet does sell a line of unified access devices, both switches and wireless, that can be managed from the FortiGate. This really simplifies the management of the wireless infrastructure as well as the wired infrastructure, but more importantly, it provides the ability to extend the security of the firewall out to the edge of the network. So out where things are connecting on to your network, whether it's wireless or wired, those policies from the FortiGate can be deployed out there. And with those devices being managed by the FortiGate, it provides unparalleled visibility into the network and what's happening on it. Here's a screenshot showing a FortiGate with a couple of switches and an access point, as well as another FortiGate behind it, and then showing the visibility in a single pane of glass of all the devices that are connected to that. Now you can drill down into those devices and learn a lot more about what they're doing, the websites they've gone to, and you can also quarantine those devices with a single click, or even set up automated quarantining based on known threat activity. Best practice number 3 is to implement access control capabilities. You want to make sure that the people that are on your network are the people that should be on your network, and that they only have access to the things that are appropriate for them to access. So that is really the definition of role-based access. And the idea behind that is, I guess, best illustrated by the Target breach, where the credentials of an HVAC vendor were used to gain access to the crown jewels, the data of all of their customers, and that never should have taken place. The HVAC folks should only have access to those networks touching the HVAC gear. Now, from the FortiGate, you can control the access to the network and who can connect to certain things, and that helps provide that role-based access to make sure that the appropriate folks are accessing the appropriate gear. We also have FortiAuthenticator that can ensure that the appropriate folks are connecting onto the network and are authenticating themselves with two-factor authentication to make sure that they are who they say they are. And that can be done with FortiToken or with key fobs, so that folks are providing both a password and another means of verification. Best practice number 4, we want to make sure that all of the vulnerabilities that exist in your network are being patched or managed. So this is where FortiWeb can come in and where FortiGate and FortiClient can help support that. One of the things about OT networks is OT operators do not tend to keep the latest version of firmware on their gear. They have a much greater tendency to not patch things and let simply the network run as is. And that does mean that as flaws are discovered, those open vulnerabilities are still there, even though patches have been released for that. And that's where a FortiWeb really comes in and is able to provide protection in front of those web-facing assets to ensure that known vulnerabilities are caught and are not able to be exploited. To help with that, we have our IPS signatures that exist within the FortiGate that can help identify known exploits and known attacks. And this is true across a range of attack vectors and attack techniques. And that exists within the FortiGate. We also have endpoint profiles that you can make sure that for those with those devices that can load FortiClient, it can provide scanning to make sure that the most recent firmware is loaded on those devices for those laptops and other devices that exist in the network that can take FortiClient. To wrap up this portion of the OT security, I want to share a case study of what one of our customers did to secure their OT network. So this is an example of a Global 100 manufacturer. They're a large manufacturer, and they were looking to provide greater security into their production facility. So they embraced our number 1 best practice, segmentation, by deploying a number of FortiGates throughout their production facility. So these were rugged FortiGates as they were being deployed into harsh environments. And they were using that to segment out away from the data centers as well as the databases they had within their network. They were also using FortiAuthenticator to make sure that they had appropriate role-based access. Within their IT environment, they then connect that over with several other FortiGates, and these were larger FortiGates, and they were using that to protect their core IT assets, their data centers, but they were still deployed several to ensure that they were continuing to provide that segmentation and protection. Now, interestingly, this is a manufacturer that uses just-in-time manufacturing. So in order to support that manufacturing architecture, they have a number of suppliers that they need to interact with on a second-by-second basis, so they can make sure that their orders and communications are delivered and received by their supplier network. So to maintain that communication path and ensure that remains secure, they also bought 162 for their supply chain network. They provided FortiGates out to their suppliers to ensure that as they connect back into this manufacturer's solutions and systems, that they're dealing with a clean connection that is appropriately secure. With that, I would like to thank you for joining this webinar as we talked about how to secure IoT as well as how to secure OT and the differences between those two types of similar networks. You can find more information about IoT and OT on the Fortinet website. And we, again, thank you for joining this webinar and hope that you learned some good tips and tricks for securing your IoT and OT networks. Thank you.